Welcome to the Coach Doctor podcast, a podcast where we discuss aspects of sports coaching from grassroots to grandstands. I'm your host, James Barkell, and on this podcast, we hear from academics who research coaching. We talk to coaches on the front line from development levels through to professional coaches, and we discuss other elements of successful sporting programs with experts and practitioners from a range of sports science fields, motivational psychology, strength and conditioning, and many other elements required for successful performance. If you'd like to know more about what we do at the Coach Doctor, you can visit our website, thecoachdoctor.com.au, and learn more about our services, or follow me on Instagram at thecoachdr or Twitter at James_Barkell for more regular information. Before I start the episode, I just wanted to let all the coaches and athletes out there know about a special deal that we've got going with Elite Performance Journals. EPJ make both coaches' notepads ideal for developing session plans and for reviewing or reflecting on sessions. And for athletes looking for that extra edge, they also have an Elite Athlete Journal designed around specific needs of up-and-coming professional athletes. For any listeners of the Coach Doctor podcast, you can receive 20% off on any of their products by simply going to eliteperformancejournal.com, check out all of their products, and when you check out, use the code COACHDOCTOR, all one word and lowercase, for a special 20% discount. For schools and clubs, you can also get journals specific to your group's needs, with schools or clubs' logos, team values, and many other options to make it specific to you. Okay, now on to the episode. In this episode, I speak with Kyle McLean. Kyle is the owner of The Coaching Gig, a business that specialises in coach development and coach education. Kyle has worked with Sports New Zealand, New Zealand Rugby, New Zealand Netball, Tennis New Zealand, Badminton New Zealand, Swimming New Zealand, and Golf New Zealand, just to name a few. His mantra is to help people thrive on and off the field. Kyle is also a bit of a musician, and while he performs a short verse of Creedence Clearwater Revival's Proud Mary, I must apologise in advance for my woeful attempt at singing along. But as Kyle says, as a coach, you need to be courageous. Well, Kyle, thanks so much for joining us on the Coach Doctor podcast today. Really appreciate your time. Can you tell me, first of all, who you are and what you're doing in the coaching space?
Yeah, kia ora, James, from New Zealand. My name's Kyle McLean. I at the moment have my own business called The Coaching Gig, but involved in coaching for a while, I guess probably 20 plus years now as an ex-school teacher, and then working in a provincial union in New Zealand called Bay of Plenty, in various roles there. Ended up in the coach development role, which I loved, and then 2 years ago jumped ship and started my own venture, which has been really exciting. So now I'm involved, coaching two teams this year. So I experienced what it's like to be a dad coach of my son's rugby team. For the first time he played football last year, so I was his football coach. It was quite interesting. And then I also coached a premier men's team in the Bay of Plenty comp. Both ends of the spectrum this year. And I guess spending most of my time, trying to find ways to help coaches, to be honest, and doing some work with some sporting organisations and connecting coach developers from around the country, and a few from Australia. Actually, we've got a few from the AFL crew and Australia Rugby that pop in some of the connects that we run for the coach development space, but pretty much living and breathing it, probably a bit like yourself.
yeah, awesome. But I guess before we get started on the coaching side of things, I've also read that you're also a bit of a musician. So first of all, what sort of music are you into?
Oh, it's the good question. But yeah, as a musician, you could say that loosely. My brother and I do gigs. We play at weddings and corporate do's and things, and he's the sort of the main driver of it. Although he's a bit younger than me, and 5 or 6 years younger, and we grew up around music and that. But so we do gigs and stuff now. So I get asked this question quite a bit, and it's really hard to answer because that's a bit of everything really. But just essentially, if you like singing and dancing to it, we'll try and play it. Okay. So imagine like the backseat of a bus trip down to the local, on a rugby trip or another sports trip, and we're the guys that sit in the back seat and strum the songs that people want to play. Not so much these days, mate, because they got Bluetooth speakers I found on our rugby trip this year, but it's a bit different. But yeah, that's a bit of us. But yeah.
So are you happy to give us a few strums on your guitar and let us hear what you're capable of?
Oh, Yeah. I was thinking it's almost like this is scripted, isn't it, James? But actually, when it reminds me a little bit of that Anchorman movie, when he gets out his Canadian flute out of it, just happens to have it next to him.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Now, I didn't know what to play, but I thought I'd play the song that I very first learned when I was a young fella. Proud Mary, Creedence Clearwater.
I'm not a big music man, but mate, I'll
All right.
I'll listen. And
we play this at a lot of gigs. There's anyway. We'll give it a crack, and if you got to sing along, if you know it, ready?
All right.
If you know the words, left to a job in the city, working for a man every night and day, burning and lost. You know the but
I know, yeah.
This one now?
Yeah, I know it now.
Okay, well, you got to repeat after me. Go. Big wheels keep on turning, Pearl Mary keep on burning. Okay, you repeat after you. Rolling,
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 rolling on the river,
rolling on the river. Awesome. Well done, mate. That's fantastic. First of all, just having the guts to get up on on a Zoom recording and do that straight up is amazing. So
got to be courageous, James. It's sort of
you do.
And if people are switching off the podcast now, then that's fine.
Going back from your musical talent, is there a lot of crossover between learning to play instruments and learning sports skills, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's I've talked to a lot of people about. Probably a couple of things that I guess reflect on around this. Is that's probably a couple of things. So one would be that most of the work I do is in invasion type sports like rugby or netball or cricket or tennis, whatever, those kind of sports where there's a lot of variable things happening, where learning a musical instrument is pretty much a closed skill. You pretty much can block out external factors. I mean, like we're playing a gig, it's basically totally within your control. All you got to do is cohesion with your bandmates if you're playing with other people. Apart from, you might get a drunken person at a wedding or something, that creating a little bit of angst, and you got to but essentially you can block that out and you're in total control of everything. You don't have the opposition pressure and stuff. So that's probably one thing that it's probably a bit different in the sports I work with. But probably the other thing that really is connected is that when I learned to play, I would generally I actually learned piano when I was young, and then when I started learning guitar, it was like, all right, I really like that song. Let's say, for example, Proud Mary that I just played. I want to learn that song, which means then I have to learn, D, A, G, C, and F. I need to learn certain chords. I need to learn certain riffs in a song. So you essentially work backwards. It's like I want to learn the whole thing, and then I've got to work out what the skills are or the things I need within that, which is essentially the road I've gone down with the coach development space. So I completed my master's research last year in game sense coaching, and essentially I was trying to find out, what in a rugby context, how we can, I guess, make learning more contextual. And that was the same kind of philosophy now I'm thinking about in a sports space, is that, well, let's learn the game first and then let's work backwards around skills and things. So now we have a reason why we need certain skills. We know where it fits in the game, etc. And that's the parallel I see with music. We're often in coaching, we see let's learn all the skills, and we often learn it through isolated drills and techniques, and then we try and put it into a game at the end. Well, if in music you probably could do that, but it's always been far more engaging the other way around, like learn the whole song and figure things out from there. So that's probably a couple of reflections on that piece.
Yeah, okay. I find it really interesting because you've got a heap of learning theories out there, and you go back to skill acquisition literature and compare the Anders Ericsson idea of 10,000 hours of deliberate practice, which tends to be misunderstood, versus the self-determination theory, where the more enjoyment it brings, the more unstructured play you might participate in. Which one actually fits the learning environment best? For example, you playing your guitar on the back of a bus on a footy trip might be similar to games-based play, as it provides constraints such as the bus moving and other distractions from players and possibly other influences. And you'd also be playing a whole heap of songs, so you're getting a lot of variation in that form of practice, as opposed to practicing in a structured lesson, which might not be as fun, but you are learning specific skills and getting more structured feedback. So which scenario make you a better guitar player? Then in sporting terms, unstructured play in the playground versus structured coaching, well, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that unstructured play in the playground can be just as, or if not more powerful than coaching sessions. So it really interests me how we can use elements of learning from other domains, whether it be learning maths or spelling or music, and apply some of these strategies to coaching to improve athlete learning.
It's really interesting because one of the things that I played the drums as well. So my brother and I played guitar and drums, and I've never had a drum lesson in my life. And I have lots of family friends and stuff. They send their kids through drum lessons and they pay loads of money, and they generally do it in isolation without people, but they want to actually do it with other people and fit into a bigger picture. But it's a sort of lesson there, isn't it? Like, we don't always have to be coached or taught. We can learn things on our own. But you're right, learning is a bit messy. There's lots of different ways to do things, and I'm sure, but I guess that's how it's been for me. But
so you're a prime example of learning through unstructured play on the drums. I find it quite intriguing to hear from people like you who have multiple skills across various domains when I struggle in one area half the time. But on another note, a lot of coaches discuss coaching philosophies. Do you think it's important to have a coaching philosophy?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. It's a lot of it's a trendy thing at the moment, isn't it, to unpack philosophies? And I think it's probably different ends of the spectrum of coaches, of how engaged they are in learning, wanting to understand the way who they are, how they want to coach. I think it's a real, strong need to understand yourself as a person and how you want to operate and how you want to interact with people and things like that. What makes you at your best. But if I look in the context of what you work in, is, let's say, from the community coach who's, like I was saying, the parent coach, which most of my work's been doing at the moment, is trying to help that person who's a colleague over in Australia Rugby calls them the 3-step coach, which is work all day, get in the car, drive to training, take 3 steps and go, okay, what am I going to do today? To the other end of the spectrum, which is the coach who's the keen bean, who's really aspirational or working in the high performance space, or it's part of their DNA and lifestyle. They're probably more invested in it, and they probably think about it a lot more. So potentially at that end, there might be a need for it. I know that with our small bricks or junior rugby coaching programs in New Zealand, we've got coaches to think about, how to create a learning environment, what does success look like, and trying to get them to fit inside that. So it's probably a yes or a no. And I think a lot of people that obviously work in sport and are educating coaches around sport probably do have reasonably strong philosophies, and we try and part that on our coaching community. But we're probably only talking about a really, the continuum of how invested people are and wanting to put effort and things like that into it. So it'd be great if they all sat down and thought about it and they a little bit, but the reality is they're probably not going to. But
no, I like that analogy, three-step coach. Get out of your car, take 3 steps, and you're on the park thinking, what am I going to do now?
That's the reality for a lot of people.
And in terms of philosophies, is there one coaching philosophy that you think is better? Or
it's quite interesting, that one, because I guess the simple answer is that you should coach the way that you can coach, or you coach your own way in the way that fits yourself as a person, fits your personality. And knowing in a team sport that, and I've helped teams with end of season reviews, and we've asked about the coaching, and they often have different views on the same coach. So within our team will be certain people that connect differently with different people. So they'll have different philosophies on how they do things. Some might be more player centric, and they use a lot of questioning based approaches, and they engage players in their learning. And then there might be the other end of the spectrum, they're a bit more dictatorial, and that may work for some. And then I take a step back and go, okay, well, let's look at some of the most successful coaches that we've had. And like in New Zealand, for example, in the rugby space, there's one coach that often gets mentioned as being the best coach they've ever had, and that's Wayne Smith, who coached the All Blacks, and he's coaching the Black Ferns at the moment. And anyone that's been coached by him loves him. I think he's a great coach. I think he's got good knowledge, but he's also the way of delivering things and engaging players. So they all say, pretty much they all say he's one of the best coaches they've had. So you think, okay, well, if any philosophy is a good one, why is his philosophy the one that that players resonate with mostly? So he'll be big on player empowerment, and he'll engage people, and he'll use a lot of questioning breaks, but he'll set high standards for them, and you know what I mean. So maybe that maybe there's a little bit in that, which I think is interesting. You know, when you're reflecting around, you know, certain approaches seem to connect better with athletes. So maybe we should invest more time into that kind of approach. Maybe, you know.
I've noticed he does a lot of sharing of his, you know, of his ideas and his philosophies as well, which is fantastic. So there's opportunities for people to listen to him and develop their coaching. And if what he's doing is the perfect model, then there are opportunities for people to sort of take on some of those concepts that he's talking about.
And he never say he's the perfect model, and you're right, he's a very humble, genuine person, so he helps. But and he'll get people around him that offer a different skill set to him, you know. I just, funnily enough, doing a podcast interview this morning with Lee Gibbs, who was ex Silver Ferns, the netball coach for New Zealand. Same era as Wayne Smith. They actually went to teach college together, and there's very similar philosophies in that. And that same kind of traits coming out, and her way of engaging people is really exceptional. You know, people that have been around here, and I've worked around here as well. Like an amazingly engaging person, heaps of knowledge and experience, has a really articulate way of keeping complex things simple, but a high investment in relationships, and empowering people and collaborating with people around them, you know, and bringing people on the journey. So there's probably a lot to be learnt from people like that, I reckon. Yeah,
that would have been a good chat, mate. With
mate. It was awesome.
I look forward to listening to it.
Yeah.
Mate, you've done some work with a number of organisations across New Zealand and a number of sports. What are some of the key areas you find that organisations and clubs need the most assistance with?
It's a good question, because we're biased coaching. I think I don't know what we're seeing in Australia, or other parts of the world, but in New Zealand, and I've been fortunate enough recently to do some work with some organisations such as Tennis New Zealand and Badminton New Zealand, Swimming Sport New Zealand, Rugby, blah blah blah. Anyway, I'm finding the same challenges they're having, and the people working in sport are really feeling really stretched at the minute. There's a lot of a lot of pressure being put on them. They're getting thrown more and more balls, things to do, and it probably relates to the New Zealand government created a massive pot of money actually to throw into sport, which is really cool. But now what's happening is lots of money tagged to that. Now I'm probably going a little bit of a tangent here, but essentially what's happening I'm seeing is that probably grassroots level, the clubs, the schools, I'd say are probably getting left out a little bit in that, because we're so busy trying to create new things and new ideas and new events and all sorts, that we probably need to look at how we can get the service or get the development or support closer to the end user. Would be my thought. So I think that's across the board. It's probably a generic thing I'm seeing is that, like, here's an example. I'm a community coach this year. I'm under nines and a premier coach, and my local provincial union and the governing body, New Zealand Rugby, haven't really had an impact on me. Not out of not wanting to, but they're obviously a few steps removed. But the club has had a big impact on me, and that experience I get from the club or the school that I'm teaching is actually the key thing to get right. So obviously invest in the key people, aka coaches, managers, administrators, and the ones that have the biggest influence are the ones closest to the athletes, I guess. So I'm not sure exactly how you do that, but it's probably with the organisations that they are starting to consider how we can do that better, and how we can actually have more impact, because there's a lot of stuff we can do, a lot of stuff we are doing that's probably not going very far. That makes sense. I'm not sure if that's resonated or not, but.
So in terms of your work, do you spend more time at that grassroots and community level, or do you spend more time looking at that elite, sub-elite development pathways?
Oh, no, I'm in the grassroots community space. So for a long time, I get asked that question, and probably lately I've become really clear that all the work I'm doing is into the community space, particularly the youth space. So coaches, sports, people that are working and influencing, impacting on our kids, whether they're 5, 6, 7 year olds, all out to like teenagers. And in my past life, I did do work at the more high performance end, and it was around, I guess, succession planning, getting coaches ready for that space, and supporting them in that. But more lately, I just think there's a bigger challenge. There's more of them, and they probably need a lot more support. So that's the goal anyway. That's investing basically every waking hour, thinking about how I can help people in that space, to be honest.
Do you think part of the issue is that community or youth sports require more education for their coaches and more guidance in the way coaches, I guess, behave and go about coaching? Or is it something to do with we're just neglecting this area because of funding, or because there's like you talked about, the 3-step coach, they don't have time to put in that extra learning and that I guess that additional focus on something outside of everything else that's going on in community or youth coaches' lives?
Yeah. Well, I'm not 100% sure, but I think one thing's become clear since I've become self-employed and not working for the man, so to speak, is that what we've found through our data and this is pretty much across in all sports, is that generally current sporting systems, coach development systems, are catering to less than 3% of the coaching population. So that looks like, for example, formal courses or qualifications or observation feedback, things that sporting organisations put on for their coaches to engage with. We're finding that more often than not, it's less than 3% will engage in that kind of stuff. So then you start going, okay, what are the other 97% doing? Well, it's really critical, I guess, for the sporting organisations to start going, okay, well, who are these people? What do they do? What's their behaviours look like? How do they engage with content? And I'll tell you one thing, obviously, at the moment we're learning is that they're engaging more with online content. Most of these coaches are 30 to 50-year-olds. Which looks like they've got kids. They get them to bed. They chill out on the couch. They jump on social media. They have a look at LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram, and ideas pop up, and that's kind of how the generation now are engaging with content. And they're not necessarily want to get in the car, drive to a local organisation and do any coach development, formal stuff. We're sort of changing how we're digesting stuff. So for us, we've got to work out, all right, what is the end user? Who are they? What do they look like? How do they behave? What do they want? And then I guess tailoring stuff to them. And there's some sports that are doing some really, cool stuff in that space. But it's probably some of the big challenges is around. Yeah. And if you step back and go, look at most organisations that spend a heck of amount of time engaging a very small percentage of the population. And we're having these conversations now with sports and highlighting that, and it's actually really confronting and revealing. They go, we've got a big group of people that we're not sure how to support. And there's a range of ways we could do that, but it's probably to be honest, people are listening to this podcast are probably the 3%, right? The ones that are really invested, engaged, and there's probably a whole heap of people out there that go about their normal life that actually have a big impact on kids and the youth, and we've got to work out innovative ways to engage them, I guess.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point you raised regarding education. We tend to be so busy now that formal qualifications or courses are becoming redundant for things like Instagram posts, where you can see a 30-second clip of a drill that might work for you or your team, or read an 80-character blurb on Twitter that provides some inspiration for a coaching session. So learning's becoming a fast food culture where we want information at our fingertips and we want it in snippets rather than information overload. You're 100% right. That's really the way coach development is going. I never thought about it like that.
And you're interesting when you stay in these conversations with people that are leading the space. So I said I do connect people in the coach development world together every couple of months, but now we've just formed a group from national sporting organisations and all the team sports in New Zealand, and actually Australia Rugby and AFL are involved in it. And we're just informally meeting every month, sharing some of the challenges we've got. And I'm essentially, my role is to bring that group together. So the mantra is I bring the coffee, they bring the chat, but it's all online. But we're finding the same thing, and we're starting to challenge our deals around how do we engage people? And what we're really starting to learn is that most of the stuff we've created for coaches fits our type of personality. It fits our ideals and our values, because we're the invested ones, we're the keen ones, we're the ones who like to read stuff and go to workshops and connect and talk about coaching, but we're probably a minority. If you get high up. So we're trying to work out how can we think differently and cater for people that don't think about it all the time and give them what they need,
Yeah, it's a really good thought-provoking question, because as coaches, we're constantly thinking about creating the best learning environments for our athletes. And now you've completely flipped that ideology in terms of now thinking, how do we create the best learning environment to inform coaches in a meaningful and consumable format? Really interesting thought. I've never thought about that as an issue before, but I guess COVID really brought that out in our society. With formal 2 to 3 day courses on hold, we started attending more easily consumable content in 1 hour webinars, or in some people's case, resorted to podcasts.
Good to challenge it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great. So the coaching gig has a number of services that you offer. One of them is specifically coaching. What does that look like?
No, I guess well, we've done in building stuff back end of what we were just talking about before, actually, around basically online content. I've tested a few ideas out, actually, and one of the idea that's gone well is essentially getting really clear on who we're targeting. But it was the parent coach, the 3-step coach. And this year we partnered up with a company called Silverfern Sport, who do a lot of balls, bibs, cones, sporting equipment, and we filmed all the content together and we gave it to and got it into clubs and whatnot. And we actually did run workshops for them as well, but we're quite hands-on. But essentially we're looking to evolve that next year. We've got some big plans for that. It's quite exciting, but not too hands-on at that grassroots level, to be honest. It's still a very in New Zealand, a very high volunteer base. We survive on, was it spit and sawdust or whatever they call it? The goodwill of people, but I'm working into that sort of space where there's people leading clubs and leading schools and wrapping support around them to essentially wrap support around their coaches, because there's probably not that kind of markup demand, I guess, at the moment, but and it's probably I think the bigger picture is to support the leaders in sport, and then put some wraparound support for those volunteer time poor people. That's the journey at the moment. We're learning heaps about it. But it's quite exciting where it could go. But essentially it all comes out of goodwill around you're just trying to help, really. But
in terms of the consultancy stuff, you find there's a lot of interest in this space?
Yeah, so it's been quite interesting when I stopped and reflected around after, or probably about 6 months ago, around what my work actually looks like. Probably about 70% of it was I'm talking about 70% of my income was probably around the consultancy type work, but largely 90% of it's in the sport industry. And so, for example, did a project with Tennis New Zealand around their professional coach register. Basically, got a group of professional coaches trying to work out how to bring a bit more structure to that plan. And then I just helped Badminton New Zealand put together their philosophy and framework and coach development plan, which is sort of the back end of that now. Swimming New Zealand, we've just sort of established something there. That kind of stuff. Done a little bit with help a secondary school with their review. Just the bits and bobs. But yes, I guess there is, because I said earlier, there's people that are really busy, and they're not. These organisations are really busy. They can't always service it themselves. So they got me to do a little bit of that, and I'm probably lucky because I'm available. And then I've done a little bit into the corporate space as well, but that kind of, some of that stuff sort of dried up a little bit when COVID came back. But I guess clearer, like for me, it's really trying to keep collaborating with cool people to do cool stuff in the sports space. So that's where the drive and passion is. But definitely moving to the online space, driving that hard, where the consultancy stuff sort of come to me a little bit through my connections. So I guess lucky enough a few years ago to be involved with the Sport New Zealand team and have a really cool network of people around the country that are doing some awesome stuff. And so but lucky there, really.
One of the links on your coaching gig website is to an article you did which was called How I Kick Cues into Touch. Tell me firstly what this was about and why it's an important area of interest to you.
I'm trying to think what that one was anyway. So what? There was, I think it was for the rugby world or something. So backstory is that when I was doing stuff for Bay of Plenty Rugby, I was running coach workshops, and I was going around the region and doing a big emphasis on essentially game-based approaches. And then and that started my master's thesis I did around game sense, and how basically I was just trying to work out how what I'm seeing and observing from coaches, how is it impacting on learning? And so I went on a big rabbit hole around that, and this is first listened to the coach doctor actually interviewed Jim Mackay, and I referenced his work quite a bit, and Shane Pillow, I know you've interviewed him, I referenced their work quite a bit in my work. But what it's funny trying to get to connect with people and how it could look in your training. It just came randomly one night in this workshop around this thing called cueless coaching. So essentially, if you get rid of cues at training, you're more likely to have your players engaged in doing stuff. So what we were seeing a lot of, and you're from a rugby background, James, so you know, but a lot of 10 kids standing in a line, the dad or the coach holding the hit shield and getting them to run in and drive, and then drop to the ground, and then the middle kids, and they go to the back of the queue, and so what we're seeing is a lot of things at the back of the queue. We're seeing kids misbehaving. We're saying they're only getting involved every 3 or 4 minutes. So then we start going, right, if you get rid of, for me, the no lines or cueless, get rid of cues has probably been the most impactful messaging we've had with coaches. Like, one thing that's connected with them across the board is that if I can coach with no cues, that means we're going to get far more opportunities, time on task, essentially to lead, to improve his players. We bring them to training to stand still pretty much. So let's get them moving. So it's been quite funny. So I did an article, around that, and to guess to help coaches, find that. But it was quite funny. I did this workshop down in Taranaki, New Plymouth, and I drove away down there, and I said, and I did the session with the rugby development officer in the afternoon, and I teed them up, and they, as a coach arrived, they were playing this game in this gym, and they're playing this game, and coaches are into it. They're having fun, and then at the end, I said, all right, they introduced me. I said, I've driven all the way from Tauranga, which is like 4 or 5 hours away. I've driven all the way. I've just got this really cool drill I want to teach you guys. So I got them in 2 big long queues, they're 10 in each. It's probably about 20 coaches at it. And I get them this passing activity, and they run down the other end of the gym, and they run back, and then next guy has a go, and so there's two guys running up and down the gym, and 18 of them standing watching. And I did it for about 3 hours. It's really hard to stay in character, but anyway, about 2 or 3 minutes into it, one of the RDOs comes up and goes, "Brilliant, Kyle." He just overheard one coach saying to another coach, saying, "This is rubbish. I'm going to go home if this is what it's like." And so we picked up on that. Said, "Hey, look, just heard that. One of you, what were you guys doing in the queue?" And then, how many guys got a turn? Oh, about a third of them got to go. We've been doing that for 3 minutes. I just overheard someone wants to go home because I think this is rubbish. Can you tell us about that? He goes, "Oh, it's really boring. I'm not getting a turn." I said, "Oh, yeah." And then and they started, and then the penny dropped for this guy. He's like, "Oh, that's what it's like at training." And I said, "What were you guys talking about?" And they go, "Oh, we're talking about the weather." And one guy had his phone out, he was checking stuff. And I was like, that's what it's like for the kids, isn't it, if they're in a queue? So that really resonated with them. It connected. And then I guess once it's been an approach, which I have found has been the most impactful probably, that now coaches that see and get that, they can only see that now. They go, "Oh, I get messages all the time. People sending me photos of stuff." All things being, "Oh my god, look, I just saw this massive queue." And in fact, one night my brother and I did this gig at this bar, and later on that night this guy stumbled over a little bit, had a couple too many, and he said, "Not too many queues here tonight, Kyle." At the bar, he loved it. He didn't have to queue for a beer, so it resonated with him even in his not too flash state at 11:30 at night.
Oh, that's awesome. I really like that idea of going in and putting on a bit of an act and trying to show them this great drill where they have to line up and wait their turns and get a lesson out of it. That's a great idea. Awesome.
I mean, trying so many approaches to work out how to get that to connect with coaches, and that's one way. There's lots of different ways, but it was quite hard to. I'm not the best at being the graph and the tutorial guy, but it was quite a funny observation.
I like that idea. It was great. So what are some of the other big issues you see in youth sport that you think has a potentially easy fix?
Yeah, I saw that question. I was like, I started thinking about all the issues. I was like, far out. There's not really too. I think there's not really easy fixes when it involves lots of people and lots of people when they got ideas and beliefs. But I think probably the one thing that I did reflect on when you flicked out the questions through, I'm glad you did beforehand, is I guess one like with coaches, I say there's one thing you can do in your training. There's one thing out of anything is not have any cues at your training, then you're going to be all right. The thing I'd say with the sporting, with I guess with sport in general would be, and especially in youth sport, would be a lot of the untoward or poor behaviour we see is often linked to results, and often results are linked to competition tables or competition structures. So I've always found that, and I haven't got evidence data to back this up, but a lot of my dealings with people generally related to a competition table. So if there's one easy fix, would be to, for example, not have points tables to a certain age. Maybe it's up to under 13s. I don't know. But essentially what I've seen, and as an example, we often see poor behavior. For example, coaches or clubs stacking teams and trying to have really elite teams so they can win the competitions. So if we don't have that carrot, then what you find is they spread the talent amongst the teams, and then we have even competition, which is cool. A few years ago, locally with this called the Barbarians Rugby Club, and they came down and ran this fun day for these kids and these they're at this local rugby club, and it was awesome. They played 4 or 5 games. There's no points competitions, no points or no competition tables kept, and these kids went hard. They played the hardest they possibly could. And they knew who won the game. They knew if they'd won or lost the game, but then they just got on with the next game. I remember this coach, he was on the sideline. He's doing really good stuff. He's really positive. And he came up to me and said, "Oh, it's so nice not having to worry about results," which I thought was really interesting. So this guy had been involved in local coaching competition. And then he's the just, having a fun day. What he was doing is actually helping them develop and improve, and he was giving them good feedback, and he's nice and calm on the sideline, and he was giving them all even game time, and it was just because of that one. For me, it was just that one that change. So that's probably, and we really look at, and there's a lot of work going over the side of the ditch around competition tables and things, and how we revamp youth sport to engage them. I've always found that is one common thing that is probably an easy thing to influence and probably quite impactful.
Alternatively, what are some of the challenging areas that you find might be really difficult to fix, and trying to implement or trying to promote change in people's thinkings or thought processes?
Oh, it's quite a few, James. That's the problem. We're trying to work out which is the most impactful thing. So a lot of work I've been doing with Sport New Zealand, for example, was around parent education. We're not using the word education. We're sort of calling it parent engagement. A lot of the work doing and stuff around leadership and how we look at current structures and systems we have and what that's driving. So as an example, a lot of over here, there's been a lot of talk around representative programs. And funnily enough, when's the right time to have representative programs? Do representative programs lead to dropout? If I don't make the team, does that mean I give up? And now I think the jury's still out on whether that has the impact, and I'd love to see there's probably some good research and evidence out there. But what's been happening in New Zealand is and netball started actually, they got rid of under 13 reps because they were finding it was a high investment and players weren't going from under 13s through the system and into senior representative teams. It just didn't correlate. So that's a good argument for not having them. And then there was a perception, and this is what I'll be keen to know a little bit more about, that rep teams potentially would lead to players dropping out. So I'm in the system, cool, but if I'm out of it, so 10 get selected, but 90 miss out. So there's been a lot of big shift. Now that is that has been really interesting seeing that, and I guess challenging people's ideals and beliefs around competition and performance versus a climate of development and what that can look like. But we're seeing a real in New Zealand in particular, a real challenge in that under 13 space, and that So the 12 to 13 space, I'd say that's probably, there's a drop off when they enter secondary school. So there's kids dropping out of school, and it's a real issue. Like this, it's also a lot of choice too. So the kids having a lot of different choices they have these days, as opposed to when I went to school, which was rugby in the winter and cricket in the summer. And now there's lots of choices. But having those conversations, it's been really hard to shift thinking. And I'm not sure sporting organisations have always done it well and been able to influence decision making. That's been a really interesting debate. Funnily enough, at the moment in my town where I live, is a thing called the Ames Games, which is a event for 11, 12, 13-year-olds. And to give you a context of it, it's got as many athletes as the Olympic Games. There's just over 10,000 athletes at it, and that brings another 10,000 parents, supporters, etc. It's massive, and it's all over the place. And it's got really good intent, and there's some really cool outcomes. The kids have a really cool sporting experience, but there are also some challenges in that space. So, for example, netball alone, the injury claims, and over equal ACC, have more than doubled in the last 10 years. So more injury claims, repetitive movement injuries, things like that have more than double, which is pretty horrific. So kids getting knee surgeries and things like that. And there's lots of these systems and structures that are out there. For example, and I'm not pointing the finger at Ames Games, but there's lots of things like that and other little representative programs. And these kids are involved in so much stuff that they're buggering themselves pretty much. And so there's some real interesting conversations we have in that space. And I'm finding the same with the work I did with badminton and tennis and other sports. That seems to be a real tipping point. So heaps to work to go in that space. But what do you guys see in Australia?
Yeah, look, I think we're sort of going through a bit of a similar pattern as the rest of the world in terms of dropout rate in those early teen years, especially for girls. There tends to be a large dropout for girls around that 15-year-old period. Yeah, I think that the challenges tend to be around options that kids have these days. And
yes,
listening to one of your podcasts, and again, a really interesting point. I think it was with Jimmy Sinclair, and and he talked about how these days kids have got access to watch a whole series of one show on Netflix from series episode 1 to episode 10, and then series 2, series 3, whatever, in one go. And whereas the comments I think you two were making were around, I had to wait the full week before the next episode was on.
The TV scheduling, eh? That's right.
The draw card of going and having this fun social time with friends in a sporting situation. If it's not enjoyable in that first or second instance, the easier option is I'd rather just sit there and play on my device or watch a series of Game of Thrones from 1 to 8 or whatever it would.
They get it's right, the choice. Because I saw some data recently. I think it's probably as many kids and the same percentage of kids involved in secondary school sport, but just spread across something like 80 sports now. There's something like 80 sports on the New Zealand secondary school website or something like that. So they're spread. You're right. They turn up and go. And there's this I come back to. They turn up and they have to stand in the queue for like half the training, waiting their turn. They're probably going to go. I might go do mountain biking or skateboarding, or there's a beach here, or go surfing, or things where there's probably less adult control. And then higher engagement, and get that instant gratification that they're maybe more used to now, eh?
Yeah, and I guess talking about adult control, if they've been at school all day, having being told what to do by adults. Things like mountain biking, surfing, and stuff like that, where they're in their own environment, they're in control of their own movements and stuff. It's an outlet for them as well. So it's a great opportunity for them to do those sorts of things. Then going again and staying in queues, having a coach telling them what to do and how to do it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Yeah, it's we haven't got all the answers, but I think coaches have a big part to play, mate.
Yeah, it's been good. Like we've brought up a couple of you brought up some really interesting questions that's challenged a lot of my thoughts. So it's been good. So one of the things you talked about was you've been helping a lot of parent coaches. If we've got a parent coach that's been dragged into coaching because no one else is willing to help, and they're one of those 3-step coaches, 3 steps. What are 3 pieces of advice you'd give to them to help them be a better coach?
Oh, probably don't know, mate. Only 3.
Yeah. Can only choose 3.
No,
the 3 big ones.
First of all, thank you so much. Yeah, probably frame it around something like something similar to that, self-determination theory type thing, and understanding like one is probably, well, I'll probably go back a step and go, first of all, I would get support. I would, by stealth mode, figure out who else I can get on board. And because the interesting thing when they ask for coaches, and this is a tangent, so I'll come back to it. They ask for who wants to be a coach, and they put that terminology in the sign up form. That freaks heaps of people out. And in some sports, they're changing it. For example, they're going, "Oh, can you be an activator or a helper?" Like netball, they're calling them star helpers. And these people go, "Oh, I can be a helper, and I can be an activator. That's cool." And so they get more coaches. So, so that freaks them out. So we're going to bring other people on and give them little bits, make things manageable for them. Would be probably one key thing I would highly recommend to people. Don't do it alone. Slowly get other people on board, another parent, or even if it's a minor coaching role or a managerial role, or just something that you can help in an area that you need help in. Don't have to take on the world yourself. And people are willing to help, I reckon. Like if you just ask them, they're generally more than willing. Sometimes the word coach just seems a bit too overwhelming for people. So that'd be one thing. I guess so when we go back to self-determination theory, I think the key things that coaches can get right to create a really cool experience. So they can create an experience where the players have a bit of autonomy, a bit of chance to have some input into their decisions, and it makes it engaging and fun for them. I think there's a real point for, if we were trying to help players improve or get more competent. It's a real need for the coaches to actually do a bit of homework on the sport they're coaching. I've seen this a lot, and a lot of memories we'll have of coaches will be nothing to do with what they've taught you, but it'll be the relational stuff and the memories they've made. But while you've got them there, you actually helping to improve. So to help them improve, we all need to be students of our sport, and we need to know the basics of how do we actually help them improve. So that'd be one thing. I'd be like, okay, get your hand on some good resources. Maybe go to a workshop that's on offer, or talk to other coaches. And so that'd be a bit of advice. And then don't have cues. No, but probably something along make long lines of that autonomy space, and helping kids engage. Just make it real fun engagement. Don't take yourself too seriously. Just get on their level, find out about them, all that stuff. I think it's really, really important. So I probably have said way too more than three, but if I had to summarize that, one would be get support on board, get some support. Two would be learn about your sport, and three would be involve the kids, involve your players, and make it real fun for them.
Nice. Yeah, no, they're three great ones, mate. Well done. Kyle, before we go, you're also doing your own podcast these days, and you've got your Coaching Gig website. Give your podcast a quick plug. Tell us what it's about, what the type of people that you're talking to or interviewing, and how our listeners can find more information on I guess, coaching and develop their coaching.
Yeah, well, I guess backstory of the podcast was that I probably only started it 5 or 6 months ago, maybe a little bit less. During lockdown, I was doing these called Monday Coach Yarns, and speak to someone for 20 minutes about something at Monday lunchtime, and then doing a few in the evening, like Facebook Live type things, and it was really fun. And then I'm getting a lot of comments going, "Oh, it'd be really good to be able to listen to that in your own time and like on a podcast." And I didn't really have a real clarity of why I'd want to do it. And then I got to a point where I was getting sick and tired of it being the Kyle McLean show around. Oh, I'm sick of being on, need to bring other people on the journey with you, and bring other people's stories and voices and opinions to essentially help in this space. So that's why I started talking to people on the podcast, to go collaborating with other people to share their stories and their perceptions, and it's really targeted. The audience of targeting is the coaches in the youth space in particular. So so today I said I interviewed Lee Gibbs, who's ex-Silver Fern, so worked in the high performance space years ago, but we connected everything back to how people at the grassroots and youth space can focus effort around the youth space. So that's we leverage back to that. that's been really focused there. And I don't know about you, Jane, but I've actually really enjoyed it. I get a real buzz out of talking to people, and this is different for me today because I'm the one rambling on, but being on the other end of the microphone and just like hearing people's perspectives and letting them go for it, I reckon is really cool. I always get feel a bit uplifted after it, and the odd person gets in touch and says they got a little bit out of it, and that sort of, even if one person gets a bit out of it, then that's probably worth it. But obviously I probably get the most out of it. So
yeah. That's the thing. We're a bit selfish because I'm like you. I just enjoy it, and I enjoy having the chat and the conversations, and I invariably always come away learning something new, which is fantastic. And
right.
Sorry, I've cut you off. Go, keep.
No, it's all good. Yeah, so I think just probably a bit similar to the it's funny because came across your podcast because someone shared it to me. It was the Jim Mackay one, and they said, "I've just listened to this. You'll be interested in it." And then I listened to another couple of them. I was like, "Oh, this is guy." And then, funny enough, we've connected. But yeah, just the opportunity to like drive along and listen to something in that space. And it's going back to what we were going back to earlier, is understanding your clientele and the people that, if they're driving to work or they're driving, they've got space in their day or they're going for a walk and they like to listen to this kind of stuff. For me, back before COVID came, I used to love listening to Radio Sport, which was a sport channel in New Zealand, and that disappeared during COVID. And so podcast has filled that gap. And I think it's another, I guess, way. There's lots of them out there now, but if he says someone gets something out of it, then it's all worth it,
Yeah,
definitely. So it's just called the Coaching Gig Podcast, and it's just on. Well, I think you can find it on Spotify. There's probably some ways I can share it to other platforms, but I haven't really worked that out yet. You might have to give me some tips, James.
No, happy to help out, mate. But I'm no what's it called, expert in this area, but happy to help out in any way I can. Hey, mate, before we go, if listeners want to get in contact with you or finding more about the coaching gig, what's the best ways?
Probably easiest way is on the we've got a Facebook page that have been running for a while, and that was just a place to put content up. I've actually just started an Instagram account this week, but I haven't worked out how to get that going properly yet either. That's 2 years behind, evidently. The website is thecoachinggig.com. Email and stuff's on there, kyle@thecoachinggig.com. Get in touch, keen to have a yarn. I was just looking forward to hopefully launching some new ideas, especially in the junior rugby space. In the coming, we're in Australia, be ready for 2023, and we're having some conversation with some clubs and stuff over there, which is cool. So hopefully we'll be able to help a few people away.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, Kyle, thanks so much for joining us today on the Coach Doctor podcast. And again, like you said, you've got your own podcast out there called Coaching Gig. So I'd encourage all our listeners to also jump on and have a listen to yours, because you've got some great guests and you talk about some great things. So, mate, all the best in what you're doing and for the remainder of the year. I know you've got a break now from footy season's finished, so you can have a bit of a break and refresh your brain and get pumped for next year.
Yeah, amazing, what happens at the end of the season, all that space in your mind, James? You were just talking about it. All right. Like, man, I've got some good ideas now. And then I'm not talking about not analysing video and we can get that stuff out, which I loved, by the way.
I hope you've enjoyed this conversation with Kyle. This definitely brought up a few issues in coaching worth thinking about more in depth for me. The whole idea of the coaching course is a great debate. Personally, I love doing face-to-face courses, but the younger generation of coaches have different needs, so providing learning through other mediums is something we can do to help the future of coach development. Helping the 3-step or the parent coach develop, when in reality time is a massive constraint for a lot of people who get into coaching. Work commitments and family commitments often eat into any time for planning or coach development time, so how can we as coach developers engage with some of these coaches, as they often have development of future athletes in their hands? One of the biggest impacts of coaches at the grassroots level is by reducing queuing or lining up to take turns for their practice sessions. This is really simple to do. Use the equipment you have. So if you have 10 balls, for example, and 20 participants, use all the balls at once, rather than using 1 or 2 with long lines of waiting kids. It might look messy and it might look like you have a lot less control as a coach, but you'll have a much higher rate of engagement and less bored kids, which is a massive impact on the success of a training session. Finally, note to myself, don't ever try singing on a podcast again. Clearly this should be left to the professionals like Kyle. If you'd like to know more about Kyle or the coaching gig, I'll include the details in the show notes. And finally, if you've enjoyed the episode, please pass it on to your colleagues. In the meantime, keep learning and catch you next time on the Coach Doctor podcast.